Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a new webinar, Speed as Habit. It's always a fear that these types of events, especially when it's relating to time management and productivity, start late. So I hope we're all ready to begin and enjoy the next 45 minutes. I'm Terence Mowry, and before I get started, I'd like to thank the organizers, Raise the Bar. They are a leading L&D consultancy and a top speaking bureau. And they work with organizations such as EY, IBM, and many others. So a big thank you to Elizabeth Clark and all her team at Raise the Bar. Let's get started. We only have 45 minutes. So I've created a factual, energizing, and I hope useful webinar for you to give you immediately useful tips and actions. So first of all, the agenda. We're going to start off with some context and a bit of background about me and what the outcomes are of this webinar today. We've got some very measurable learning outcomes. The session will begin, and then we have a prompt close and Q&A, and we'll be looking to finish by 1:45 sharp. So first of all, I'm Terence Mowry. 3 fast facts about me. Number 1, I'm an entrepreneur mentor in residence at the London Business School. I'm on a mission to spread entrepreneurship. That means the spirit, the skill set, the ideas that rewrite how business is done. I help entrepreneurs and executives really build the future. And you'll know from your own frustrations that productivity and cutting through the barrage of noise and distractions and focusing on what really matters is not easy. It's not easy in the 21st century. Battles for attention, demands on your time, and the mobile phone makes it very difficult to focus. Number 2, I'm the author of a new book, The Leader's Mindset: How to Win in the Age of Disruption. And I believe that to thrive now and in the future, you need to upgrade your mindset for a world of overload. Nobel laureate psychologist Herbert A. Simon wrote, "Too much information leads to a poverty of attention." And I've discovered from my own experiences that attention is a scarce resource. I've got a confession. A couple of years ago, I organized tickets to watch Barcelona versus Zaragoza at the wonderful Nou Camp. And I took control. I was the project manager and purchased a couple of tickets, flight tickets for myself and my friends. And we were flying from Stansted Airport, just outside of London. Everything was going well. Arrived at the airport with good time to spare and had coffees, relaxed, ready to go. Very excited, looking forward to getting to Barcelona. Went to check in, and to my horror, the EasyJet official looked at me. In fact, it was a death stare, and said, "I'm sorry, sir, you've come to the wrong airport." This is a true confession. We were actually meant to be at Gatwick. Now, if I'm honest with myself, it was a very stressful period. I was flying frequently, lots of long nights. And the key learning point is attention is a scarce resource. And if you don't stop to renew yourself, if you don't stop to think ahead and be clear about your why, your purpose, why do you do what you do? If you don't invest time rather than just spend time, this is what can happen. And in fact, the Japanese have a word for it, karoshi. Karoshi, it means death at your desk from stress. We need to avoid this at all costs. So Number three, the final fact about me. I also write about leadership and innovation and the practice of disruption, and speak as well at global conferences around the world. So to sum up, my goal today is to really give you an espresso for your mind, a wake up call for your mind, to be clear about what can you do to be more focused, be more effective, and get things done. Let's look at the learning outcomes. So to coin the famous Stephen Covey phrase, let's begin with the end in mind. So number one, very important objective today is to help you understand and unlock and build an effective mindset. And that really means three things. It means saying no or not yet, protecting your time. It also means focus, making sure that you're focusing on the right areas. And finally, it's about having an MIT. That stands for your most important task, an MIT. So that's building an effective mindset, number one. Number two, distractions. I don't know about you, but it's very easy to check mobiles 50, 100, 150 times a day. And in fact, during my research for my book, The Leader's Mindset, 50, 100 times a day was very common for most people. They thought it was less, but actually when you observed and took note, it was a lot more. Now, if you start doing the maths, it can actually take up to 25 minutes to recover from a distraction or an interruption. And that interruption could be self-imposed, or it could be an interruption from outside. It could be an email, a text, and so on. So it's very difficult to focus when you're constantly reactive. The second part of this learning objective is to beat procrastination. Sometimes we procrastinate on procrastination, and it's very easy. Even being busy can be a form of procrastination. So I want to help you vanquish procrastination and really focus on your most important work so you bring your best self to the office. Number three, a great book. If you're going to read one book over the next week, I'd recommend, not my book, Dave Allen, Get Things Done. And I'll be sharing some research from his book, Get Things Done. This is known as GTD. So very important part of this effective mindset, which is ideas are easy, execution is everything. So to sum up, some very important learning outcomes. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. Context is key. So I want to very quickly set some context. What is speed as habit? We're now in a world where it's an age of overload. We're constantly on 24/7. And speed is important. We put speed on a pedestal. And if you look at what's happened over the last 75 years, it took the telephone 75 years, for example, to reach 100 million users. It took WhatsApp 3 years, and Pokemon Go about a week. So the speed, not just the speed, but the speed of change is truly breathtaking. I think this creates tremendous opportunity, but also tremendous risk. According to Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum, he's said, in the new world now, it's not the big fish which eat the small fish. It's the fast fish which eat the slow fish. So we've got a dilemma here. We want to be fast. We want to be reactive. We want to be responsive. However, at the same time, that can come at the cost. One of my favorite points of view on this comes from Professor Julian Birkinshaw at London Business School. And he talks about the mindset of thinking fast and thinking slow. And I think this is a really good way of an important skill to develop. So it's important to be fast, to execute quickly, but are you executing the right things? Sometimes we need to invest time, not just spend time. So that's a really important point for you to remember and take away. How much of your day are you investing to benefit your future self? Or are you just spending your whole day at the mercy of email, mobile, and so on, being constantly reactive? So that's speed of habit. We need to be fast, but we also need to be slow. Here's the challenge. I did a lot of research for my book, The Leader's Mindset, and here are some of the biggest frustrations, challenges that you and I are facing in the age of overload. One, higher levels of stress. Our brains are tired. If you think about it, we're operating now at such a high level of intensity. It's a ticking time bomb. We're running our mental and emotional reserves into the red. And at a biological level, your brain floods the body and the mind with chemicals such as cortisol and noradrenaline. Your primitive instincts take over. And this actually forces you into what I call a fight, flight, or freeze state. And an eminent psychologist whom I admire greatly, Dr. Steve Peters, he calls this the inner chimp. And when the inner chimp rears its ugly head, it means that your objectivity, your strategic perspective, your attention to detail, they all suffer. Another example is this incessant reacting to mobile phones. And even the advent of a selfie-related accident is on the rise. I know, it's incredible. I spoke to a doctor about this, and he said that the number of selfie-related accidents has gone up incredibly over the last 18 months. Continuing distractions, if we're distracted or interrupted, or we distract ourselves or interrupt ourselves by looking at a new email that comes in, it can take up to 23 minutes to refocus. Sometimes it's not easy to focus on focus. Again, according to my research, we're interrupted frequently, every couple of minutes. And that could be digital interruptions or physical interruptions. A final point is that, from my research, is that over 65% of the leaders that I interviewed say that a task is urgent but not important. So a question for you to consider: how effective are you with your time on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest? Have a think about that question and commit to a number. Now, time is life. There are 3 numbers that you need to take away today. And this is what I call the wake-up call message, because it's very easy in the age of overload to waste time and energy on other people's agendas, on digital distractions, on focusing on the wrong tasks, or committing to a job that doesn't fulfill you, or being in a relationship that doesn't work. Time is life. Time is precious. Here are 3 numbers to remember and share with your colleagues. 1, 480. Well, you've probably guessed what that is. That's 480 minutes in a day, in an 8-hour day. So when you're at work or working from home, what are you doing with your 480 minutes? Are you treating it like money? What I mean by that is time debt or time credit. A time debt is when you just spend time. You never plan. You never prevent. You never anticipate. You never think ahead. You never stop and slow down and renew yourself. A time credit is the opposite. You plan, you think, you pause, you take a productive pause, you slow down, you manage people's expectations. I'd like you to stop thinking about time and start thinking about managing others' expectations, because that's often one of the biggest actions to take away. Time management is not about managing time. It's about managing your mindset and other people's expectations. So remember, 480 minutes in an 8-hour day. Are you spending it or investing it? Are you protecting it? Let's look at the second number. This is a bit scary, but I want to give it to you. 960 months equates to 80 years of age. I know what you're thinking. When I actually did the maths for myself, I calculated that I only have 500 months left. Now, my purpose here is not to depress you. One could say this is what you call a Prozac moment. But seriously, I want you to think about time is life, time is precious. We waste a lot of time and energy. So 960 months is 80 years of age. What are you going to do with that block of time? Final number, that equates 960 months equates to 29,200 days. Now, I hope these numbers have created a sense of urgency. My goal is certainly not to prompt you all to resign immediately now and go on a worldwide holiday for the rest of your life, but it's really making clear, crystal clear, that it's very easy in the age of overload and the age of distraction to deplete our energy on stuff that doesn't matter, to waste time on other people's agendas, or to simply not be clear about the purpose and the focus that really matters. So let's do a recap. Some big challenges out there in the age of overload. Distractions, a reactive mindset, brains are tired, technology is addictive, attention is a scarce resource. Let's now start moving towards some specific solutions to your time challenges. I'd like you to do a quick 2-minute exercise. Here are the instructions. Check each statement below, which I'll bring up now, and evaluate your current skill level on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is the lowest, so lowest skill level, 5 is the highest. We have, I know my top priorities. So I'd like you to grab a pen and give yourself a score, an average score, between 1 and 5, 5 being the highest. Number 2, I manage my distractions. How good are you at that? Give yourself a score between 1 and 5. I practice the 80-20 principle. For those who aren't familiar with that principle, it actually comes from an Italian economist. And the purpose is, the idea is 80% of results or 80% of output come from 20% of input. So the idea is there's going to be 20%, 30% critical areas, your MITs, your most important tasks that have a disproportionate impact on the outcome. You've got to know what they are. So number 3, I practice the 80-20 principle on a daily basis. Give yourself a score between 1 and 10. 1 and 5, sorry. Number 4, I manage other people's expectations. Remember a key message: time management. It's not about managing time. It's about managing distractions and other people's expectations of what is possible for you. So how assertive are you? How effective are you at pushing back, protecting, negotiating, saying no or not yet? It's not easy. And there are cultural differences here as well. In the UK, if you're living or working in the UK, we have what's called a mitigated speech pattern. In simple terms, we candy coat language, and we find it very difficult to say no. We say yes when we mean no. And this can create all sorts of problems. Finally, number 5, I'm effective with my 480 minutes. Take a few moments to give yourself a score for each of those statements. Add up your total score. Your total score should be out of 25 points. Okay, let's have a look at where you're at. It's always a good investment to do a reality check, to hold a mirror up and say, well, how am I actually doing now? What are the gaps? So that we can close the gaps quickly. Now, here are your ratings. If you scored between 20 and 25, well, congratulations. You're probably very effective and have a GTD mindset, get things done attitude. If you scored between 15 and 20, well, you're effective, you contribute, you produce, but there is room for improvement. If you achieve between 10 and 15, well, you're doing okay. You know that. There are good days and bad days. And I'm sure most of us are in that category. We're not machines here. We have good days and bad days. Finally, 10 or less, watch out for that Japanese term, karoshi, death at your desk from overwork. Now, you can also do this exercise with your colleagues quickly. The fact is that time challenges affect everybody. Digital distractions affect everybody, and not just adults, children as well. There's a Professor Susan Greenfield at Oxford University who is conducting some pioneering research into the dark side of technology and the addictiveness of always being switched on and always wanting to, it's quite exciting, isn't it? When you get an email or a text or an SMS, you want to have a look at what that is. And so we end up self-interrupting ourselves. And remember, according to the psychologists, it can take up to 25 minutes to recover from that interruption. So a quick win is stop the pop-ups. Now, what are your biggest time wasters? There are many, and I have to combat them every day as well. I'd like you to have a look at the list. We start off with lack of planning, lack of priorities, and so on. So have a look at that list, read through, and pick out in your own mind your top 3 time wasters that get in the way of you achieving your goals. Now, this is an exercise which I'd like you to do in more detail for yourself, for your team, with your colleagues after the webinar. But it's a very useful exercise to clearly identify the biggest time wasters affecting you and others. And then you need to do 2 things. 1, think about the cause. So what's the root cause of that time waster? And then number 2, think about a practical solution. Let's do one example. So a lack of planning. Well, I would suggest that you think ahead and then work your way back. Schedule into your calendar important milestones and get started. Be clear about the end goal. So begin with the end in mind, as the saying goes, and then work your way back and break the goal or the activity or the objective down into manageable chunks. Date and time, activate each one, and then hold yourself to account. Now, it's very easy when you promise yourself to break the promise. So another quick win is declare it, make it public, and appoint an accountability buddy or partner who can check in and make sure that you're delivering on your promises. So to sum up, time wasters, I'd like you to look at these in more detail. 2 actions, think about the cause and think about the solution. Let's go to the next part of this webinar. What's the effective mindset? Well, this is 3 things. It means saying no or not yet. Now, I'm not suggesting you go back to the office or back to your colleagues and say no to them, but it's about creating some strategies, some effective negotiation tactics to be able to manage other people's expectations on reality, not fiction. Remember, you've only got 480 minutes in the day. Often we commit to 1,000 minutes of expectations and then we burn out. So effective mindset means 3 things: saying no, focus, and beating procrastination or procrastinitis. Let's look at this in more detail. So we need to focus on focus. Now, the late Steve Jobs said focus, leadership and focus is about saying no or not yet. And I'd like to give you some practical strategies to test out. So let's look at this. Number 1, you need to assess requests and demands on your time. Often we just react. We react emotionally. We say yes without really evaluating and scrutinizing what the request is and the true time it will take to complete that request. So it's important to ask clarifying questions and ask, is this the right use or the best use of my time? And use delay tactics as well, so that you're managing the other person's expectations based on fact, not fiction. So assess requests and assess demands rigorously. There's a principle from Richard Cialdini, who's an expert on persuasion, called the law of scarcity. And actually, there's something to be said about sometimes holding back. Of course, we are primed, we are hardwired to want to please and want to respond and react quickly. But if you think about it, if you react too quickly to emails, if you respond too quickly, it can actually commoditize. You become commoditized and you set a precedent. You set a precedent with your colleagues, with your clients, that you're always available. Somehow, counterintuitively, we can lose our value, erode our value, if we're always too fast to respond. And we run the risk of mistakes or errors as well. So sometimes slower makes faster and also improves the quality of the thinking. I'm talking about thinking strategically, not just day-to-day operations. So 2 areas. Another strategy for saying no is to protect your time, to say, look, I want to help you, or tell me more about your request, and provide a suggestion, provide a timeline, and actively protect those 480 minutes. Now, I appreciate this all depends on who is making the request. I'm not suggesting that if your CEO comes to you and has an urgent request, you say no, but actually you'll get more respect by managing their expectations and demonstrating the true length it takes to complete a task. So protection is a very important principle from today. How much of your day do you protect and negotiate? Finally, in order to focus and focus better, you've got to negotiate. So in life, we don't get what we deserve. We get what we negotiate. I want you to remember that. We don't get in life what we deserve. We get in life what we negotiate. So, very important point, skill set number 1 for being effective. You've got to be able to protect, push back, and manage other people's expectations. You could be an expert, a guru on productivity, but if you can't say no and manage expectations, you're going to suffer. Now, skill set number 2 to be effective: focus. Another great book which I recommend is Daniel Goleman, Focus: The Hidden Driver of Excellence. As some of you might be aware, Daniel Goleman is also responsible for a very famous book on emotional intelligence. In the book Focus, he talks about 3 types of focus that we need to be adept at in order to be effective, not just with other people, but with time as well. The first type of focus, which I'd like you to look at is inner focus. That's on the left. So inner focus. This is about self-awareness. It's about listening to your heart, your gut, your intuition. You know when you're stressed. You know when things aren't going right. You know when you're reacting, or you're going too fast, or overcommitting. So number 1 is about self-awareness, self-regulation. It's about listening to yourself. And that's the foundation, the DNA. It's reflection. One of the dangers in the age of overload is that we're doing more, we're reacting more, but we're not thinking. And so it's very important to just sometimes switch the mobile off, take the pop-ups off, just focus on doing one task rather than multitasking. Declutter your brain. Renew yourself. Take a brain break. These are important actions to grow your inner focus. The second type of focus is outer focus. That's looking outside of your company. It's looking at your industry, looking at the environment. And we now operate in what I call it's a VUCA world: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And so the levels of complexity, decision points, disruption, rapid change is making it much more difficult to focus. And so outer focus, I'd recommend that you really stay up to date with trends that excite you, trends that scare you, plug into different networks, and make sure that you are looking outside, not just inside. So this is like outside in thinking skills. It's very easy to become blind to our own blindness. The final type of focus, which is critical, is other focus. So that's focusing on other people. It's the EI, the emotional intelligence, the social skills, the communicating, the listening. 3 types of focus that are critical in the age of overload in order to get the job done and achieve your purpose in life. So that's skill set number 2. The final skill set for being effective. Effective means doing the right thing at the right time in the right way, is procrastination. And, it's a human trait to procrastinate. It's one of my favorite quotes. I'm very busy doing things I don't need to do in order to avoid doing anything I'm actually supposed to be doing. Can you relate to that? I can. There are many different forms of procrastination from the world of psychology. Perfection can be a form of procrastination. We strive for perfection, and so we put it off and never get started. Risk-taking, fear of failure can also be a form of procrastination. Being busy with busyness, so doing your busy work rather than your best work, can also be a form of procrastination. So what's the answer? What's the antidote to getting rid of procrastination that can get in the way of not just success, but happiness as well? Here are some strategies. Number 1, do faster than doubt. Imagine a boxing ring. In the left-hand corner, you've got do. In the right-hand corner, you've got doubt. Round 1, do is a little bit scared, overthinking, doubt gets started. The point of the story or the principle is that the more momentum doubt gets, the less chances are that you'll ever get started. And what that means is regret, never knowing. So there are 2 types of failure: action and inaction. It's far better to test and experiment and find out and become what I call a failure pioneer. If you think about the word fail, F-A-I-L, I'd like you to replace those letters. So fail, F-A-I-L, from action I learn. So fail, from action I learn. So get started is a very important antidote for procrastination. Number 2, spoke about the perfectionist mindset, which can stop us from starting or mean that we spend too much time on tasks or activities that don't deserve it. Focus on progress rather than perfection. We live and operate in an imperfect world. So be clear about where you're allocating time, your energy, your commitment, and focus on moving forward fast and progressing rather than this unrealistic utopian perfection mindset. Number 3, you've got to be accountable. And what I mean by that is, to beat procrastination, you need to declare it, make it public, and get others around you to also help you. My own research has shown that if you declare your actions and get others to support you and reward yourself and have recognition and celebrate successes as well, 1, you're going to enjoy it. 2, you're going to be much smarter and faster and more effective. So to sum up, there are 3 skill sets to think about in order to beat procrastination. I'd like you to make a note of those and really apply them, take them away, put them into action. Practice daily courage to say no. Practice daily effort to stop and think and plan ahead rather than react. Remember, when you say yes to something, you say no to something else. Now, let's move on to the next part of this webinar. And I'd like to now share a short case study about purpose, because if you want to be effective with your time, reduce distractions, stay focused, stay motivated, you need to find your why. And your why is your purpose in life. And that can change, but depending on where you are in your life stage. But without knowing your why, your purpose, it's easy to waste time. Waste those 960 months. So last year I met a very inspirational guy. I call him the Apostle of Purpose. His name's John Wood. He was a very busy, stressed out senior executive at Microsoft. And he took advantage of his annual holiday and decided to go trekking in Nepal. And during that trek, he got to visit a couple of schools, and he met a headmaster of one school, had over 100 pupils below the age of 11, a library, but no books at all. And the headmaster said to John Wood, "John, if you ever come back to visit us, can you bring some books?" John knew at that point that he could never go back to selling software. He went back to the US, he quit his job, and 9 months later, as you can see on the photo, he went back to Nepal with his father. He bought an old yak and put some books on the back of it. Now, there's a couple of points to remember and take away from this story. One, you've got to find your purpose. So you've got to be clear about what excites you. Move every fiber of your body in that direction. Two, we can't procrastinate forever. So you need to make some choices. As the saying goes, you make choices and choices make you. Three, you can still use the principle. So focus, thinking big, acting bold, adapting, being agile, executing quickly. And this is what John Wood's done. So he's created now this charity called Room to Read. And the idea is, if you can learn to read, you can read to learn. Leaders are learners. So if you want to improve your productivity and grow as an individual, read expansively. Here are some final winning habits to remember and put into practice immediately. Read through. I'll share the first one. So cut away unimportant tasks and focus on what is important. Do first things first and don't do the second things. I think it's really critical in the age of overload that you are clear about what is important, your MIT, your most important task. Allocate breaks strategically. So it's important with tired brains to take a brain break. When you're defocused, when you're out of the office, you're actually more likely to be creative as well. When you know that you need to leave the office to be creative, you know there's a problem. So to combat stress, be more strategic, take breaks. That will make a big difference. Number three, remove productivity pit stops. So things that limit your productivity. Look at your office environment, for example. Look at how you approach your day, your habits. I mentioned before, stop the pop-ups. For example, you have email popping up. Clear the desk. Schedule your diary into your calendar so that it's real, it's actionable, it's visible. Do what I call monotasks. So focus on important activities and avoid multitasking. The brain is simply not wired to multitask effectively. Number four, tap into your inspiration. So be clear about your purpose, your why, and match it with your passion, and then prioritize it and get started. Another action, create barriers to entry. So that means not making yourself 100% available. Remember, to be effective, it's about managing others' expectations and protecting your energy and your time. Optimizing time pockets. So be clear, are you a morning person, an afternoon person, an evening person? Match energy to when you are most productive in your day. Final two, set timelines. So I think a very important part of this is deadline and date activated, creating a sense of urgency to beat procrastination. Finally, in terms of winning habits, automate where you can, delegate where you can, defer where you can. So it's about really ruthlessly evaluating demands on your time and making sure that at the end of that 480 minutes, you've achieved what you set out to achieve. Some final thoughts. Take a productive pause now and think carefully. There are 3 important actions I want you to take away in order to be more effective, be more productive, and be more successful. So number 1, as we heard from the story from John Wood at Microsoft, find your why. Start with a clear purpose. That way, it's much easier to filter through the barrage of distractions and demands and requests on your day. So start with why. Number 2, treat your time like money. Invest time means preventing, anticipating, thinking strategically, planning. Likewise, avoid time debt. That means procrastinating, not planning, reacting, and saying yes to everybody else's requests all day long. Finally, manage other people's expectations. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of everyone else. I remember many times during my days in consultancy, this word urgent, everything is urgent. It's one of the most overused words in the British language. So we need to combat that and lead a culture change. Very critical. So start with your why, invest time, and manage expectations. Now, your time is precious. We spoke about the 960 months. So to finish off, one of my favorite thought-provoking quotes from Steve Jobs. Your time is precious. Don't waste it living somebody else's life. Don't get trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't allow the noise of other people's voices to drown out your own inner voice. Most importantly, have the courage to listen to your own heart and intuition. It somehow already knows what you want to become. Everything else is secondary. Knowing that you're going to die is the single best way of avoiding the trap of thinking you have something to lose. There is no reason to get started. I hope you've enjoyed this short, to-the-point webinar. I want to thank all of you for registering and thank my hosts, Raise the Bar, for organizing this. Today, we've had over 150 listeners, so it's been a fantastic response. I would recommend you review your actions, you review your notes from today. Elizabeth Clark at Raise the Bar will also forward the slide deck, and you can go through it again with your team, picking out one thing. What's the one thing that you're going to take away today to improve your productivity? You can catch me on Twitter and also Raise the Bar. And we've got some websites as well, mine and Raise the Bar's. And my new book, The Leader's Mindset, is out on October the 4th, where there's much more information, stories about leadership, productivity, and the art of being effective. Some final references for you to read through when you receive the slide deck. One of the classics, Eat the Frog by Brian Tracy. And last but not least, a final big thank you for registering and listening. I hope you found it of value, and there'll be the opportunity now to look at some questions if you're still available. Good luck with your time, and thank you.